Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation and welcoming back to the channel the loyal friend Reed Little. How are you, Reed?
I am doing fantastic, Peter, on this hot day in Texas, the perfect weather to be discussing this particular band. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. We are going to cover ZZ Top, the quintessential American band, and rank the top 10 albums, or just our 10 favorite albums. So, Reed, from 10 to 1, maybe you could just start and tell us your first encounter with ZZ Top, and then we'll get stuck into it.
Okay, well, that's easy because it was MTV. Remember, it's hard to remember the exact timeline now, but MTV came before what we now think of as classic rock radio. There was just rock radio. There was no specific classic rock format. So ZZ Top did not used to be all over the radio like they are on classic rock radio. So my first encounter was, I think it was Gimme All Your Lovin'. I think that was the first video off of Eliminator. So that came out when I was 15, which is the perfect age to be absolutely captivated by a video that was three beautiful young women and that 33 Ford of Billy Gibbons's, 33 or 34. I think it's 33. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm off. But so hot rods, beautiful women, and smoking guitars, and that was it. I was hooked on that sound and the videos. And then they also had videos for Sharp Dressed Man and Legs, which were just as good. So yeah, that was my first encounter with ZZ Top.
I second that. MTV, all the music stations over there were playing Legs. Legs was an Uber hit, went to number 3, and just the videos just got me hooked. That was just a big smash. And I think around 83, 84, probably really up to 86, radio was just playing ZZ Top everywhere. So, all right, Reed. So without further ado, why don't you give us our number 10 and we'll do the countdown 10 to 1. So what's your number 10?
Okay, so I'm going to annoy your audience right up front because I don't really care much for early ZZ Top. It's too bluesy. I've said this on many channels. I don't like the blues. What I love about ZZ Top is that Billy Gibbons plays the blues over well-crafted rock and pop songs. When he's just doing straight 12-bar blues, bores the hell out of me. He's still a monster player, but the music is not as good. My number 10, I'm going to start off with Rio Grande Mud. Now, to be honest, there are only 2 songs on this album that I like, and that is Francine, the first track, and then Just Got Paid, which is in a real high contender for my favorite ZZ Top song of all time. That riff is just monstrous. That is such a great song. But the rest of the album, as soon as he hits Mushmouth Shoutin', I check out and I never check back in on that album. It's just too bluesy for the rest of it. But those first 2 tracks are so killer that it still makes my number 10.
Well, that's the most unorthodox start to a show I've ever done with you, Reed. You've chosen an album in the top 10 and you only like 2 songs. Is it because those 2 songs are just so damn good, you just overlook the rest of it?
Here's my thing with ZZ Top. I always, until we get up to about number 3, and I'm talking 3, 2, 1, my first 7, I always like a few songs. Most of it I'm neutral to. But the ones in the lower order, there are songs that I just hate. Like, I can't listen to Mushmouth Shoutin'. That's a terrible, it's just a bog standard 12-bar blues, and it's just, please. But those first 2 songs are so killer. So it's really that balance. How many amazing songs there are, the guitar playing, because the guitar playing's killer on all of them. And if you look to a lot of professional guitar players, they'll talk about ZZ Top's first 2 albums as being really Billy's best playing. But for me, I actually like some of the later albums, and I'll get into that as we get into reasons why I like his playing on those later albums. But yes, it's very much, I like a few songs, I'm neutral to a lot of songs, and then there are songs that I just don't like. And on Rio Grande Mud, there are just too many songs that I don't really care for. But yeah, it still beats out 5 other albums.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, I'll start things off. Go absolute counterpoint to you. I love those early ZZ Top albums. They're bluesy as hell, and that really sells it for me in respect to ZZ Top. So I'm going to start off with ZZ Top's first album. Came out in 1971. Started the production partnership with Bill Ham. I love this. The first song, Somebody Else Has Been Shaking Your Tree, that wonderful pedal steel. It's got that pulsating bass and that crisp drumming of Frank Beard. It's just got a real groove and it's in the pocket, and that just sets the scene for ZZ Top for me in that 70s period. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Stones. I always think of Brown Sugar for some reason. Certified Blues is another good song. Neighbor, Neighbor. It's got a little bit, it's tough, it's tight, it's got a little bit of menace. Backdoor Love Affair. I like that. That's all tight playing. I love the playing on this album. And Billy Gibbons' tone is just to die for. I love it. He's just weaving these little sort of guitar lines in and out. And look, they're the ultimate power trio as far as I'm concerned. A special shout out for a song called Squank, which was their only dabbling with a topic on pollution. They were getting all ecological on us. Never sort of covered that topic ever again. But there's enough humour, enough sort of left field type of lyrics to really set the template for ZZ Top throughout their career, all starting on that first album, and that's my number 10, ZZ Top first album. And just a quick shout out, Billy Gibbons was asked, what's your band? Describe it. Are you Southern? Are you Tex Blues? And he described it as, we sound like 4 flat tires on a muddy road. And that's the sound of ZZ Top. Over to you, number 9.
Billy is one of the all-time great raconteurs. The man can really tell a story. All right, so actually, my number 9 is ZZ Top's first album. So here's the thing. I dislike it for most of the reasons that you mentioned, but that first album has so much brilliant guitar playing. Just listen to Neighbor, Neighbor. I don't think Neighbor, Neighbor is a very good song, but the guitar playing on it is amazing. It's just hot lick after hot lick after hot lick. And in fact, that was if you go to professional guitarists and you ask them, what they love about ZZ Top, they're going to bring up ZZ Top's first album and Rio Grande Mud. Those are the real influential albums, because Billy is a guy who started off, he was very young. He was in his early 20s. He was born in 1959, so he was 22 years old when ZZ Top's first album came out. He was a teenager when he toured with Jimi Hendrix, which is, there's a hell of a thing to have happen in your teen years. And of course, Jimmy gave him a shout out on the Dick Cavett show, said that Billy Gibbons was his favorite guitar player. People often get that wrong and say he said that Billy was the best guitar player. He did not. He said that Billy was his favorite guitar player, which is a very different thing. But as a young man, he's blowing hot licks over everything. And I've written essays about this, but people who say, Billy Gibbons, man, less is more, I tell them, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Billy Gibbons is the absolute opposite of less is more as a young man. Now, he doesn't play, he's not fast, he's not like a neoclassical shredder, but he'll do 5 or 6 solos in a single song. That's not less is more. The man is more. He is playing guitar all over everything. But I do particularly love Squank. That's a fun song. And I think the songs Going Down to Mexico and Backdoor Love Affair, those are the songs that set the ZZ Top template. The rest of it, again, too bluesy, lots of hot licks, but those 2 songs you listen to and go, this is what ZZ Top is going to carry forward from this album and really develop into their signature style.
Rightio. Well, my number 9 is Fandango. So this is a little bit of a frustrating album because I would have loved to have heard a live album covering 4 sides. in the 70s, where they were absolutely at their stone cold peak. So you basically got side one, which is they're live, and side two, which you've got some new tracks. 1975. This was the one that really started to get them some traction, get some airplay, I think, over in Australia. Look, let's talk about side one. It just shows a lot of it is very sped up blues. It's a lot more aggressive. A lot of their, studio material is not as fast. It's a little bit more controlled, but live, you can see it's a lot more raucous. Jailhouse Rock, Backdoor Love Affair medley, Thunderbird. You can see that they were a bit of a force of nature in the 70s. But side two, it's got two of their staple songs, like Heard It on the X. That's a great song. And Tush, that's one of the great Southern boogie rock songs of all time. It's got that wonderful Billy Gibbons slide. It's got a great vocal. It's a pure carnal cattle call. It's just cheekiness, The guitar match the cheekiness and the sleaziness in a good way of the lyrics. Tush. But Heard It on the X, Tush, and Balinese. Really three great songs. But it's a little bit of dual personality. Live, I want to hear more of it. And at the other end, side two with those three original songs, I want to hear more songs. So I don't know. Maybe they could have just put two separate albums out in that particular year. Anyway, Fandango, that's my number 9. Frustrating, but it is what it is.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, Tush is a piece of slang that really was very regional. So, and he's not saying tush, he is very specifically saying tush, which was easy to misinterpret, but I think that was the point of it, was that it was included because it was so easy to misinterpret. Anyway, so my next album is an album that gets a surprising amount of hate. I think the Contrarians did an episode where the guy doing ZZ Top's worst album called this ZZ Top's worst album. But to me, it's Recycler as number 8. Now, I love the tones in 80s ZZ Top. I know the purists are going to say the 70s. Well, I don't care. ZZ Top sounded like a lot of other rock bands in the 70s. They were playing Les Pauls through Marshalls. There's only so much you're going to get with the tone on that. When he changed to using a lot of studio trickery, when they were doing sampled drums, when they were bringing in keyboard parts, the music got exponentially more interesting to me. Plus, they upped the tempos. Just like you said on the last album, a lot of their songs are very slow until they hit the 80s, and they started trying to hit around 120 beats per minute. So much faster tempos. Recycler gets a lot of hate because it's functionally the third album in a row that's of a very, very similar style. But Eliminator is diamond, Afterburner is multi-platinum. Why would they not do another album in that style? I'm like, what do you want? You want them to go back to putting out 1970s blues so they could sell 100,000 albums to people that were really pissed off that it didn't sound like the other stuff in the 80s? No, they're going to continue to put out music that sounds like the music that's been so successful. Now, again, it's about songs, not the entire album for me yet. And I love Give It Up and Heads in Mississippi. Especially Heads in Mississippi. I think that is a phenomenal song. I think if they had stuck with the same kind of video that they had done with Eliminator, that it would have been super hot on MTV. Instead, it's got this weird prison break, guy runs into a strip club thing where Billy Gibbons and the boys are playing. I'm like, I don't know. It's not quite the same vibe. But I adore that song. I adore Give It Up. And I have no problem with the rest of Recycler. So it is easily, now it's not as good as the other two. I'll give them that. It's not as original. It's not as creative. And I do want to shout out, often their lyrics simply suck. ZZ Top is not a band that produces amazing lyrics. So I like it when they're being weird, like that. I was stumbling through the parking lot of an invisible 7-Eleven. That's a fantastic lyric. Does it make any sense? Only if you are drunk off of your behind, which I think they were a lot.
Yeah, I disagree. I think their lyrics are a lot of tongue in cheek, a lot of double entendres, and there's a lot worse lyricists than this band. So I don't think they kind of suck. I think they're totally in the tongue in cheek humorous, and there's a few songs where they're really quite sharp observationally. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I like Recycler too. Guess what? That's my pick too. I think it's way underrated. And in doing this exercise and listening to the catalogue right up, I think there's this common narrative. This album is a bomb. But as you said, if you're following a Diamond 10 million and what was Afterburner went 5, and this, this did 1 in 1990, it's not too shabby. Look, they haven't completely shed the sequences and the synthesizers, but they're kind of way back. The guitars are pushed up. It's much more organic. But a lot of the sequences and keyboards are there to pad out, to provide some filling the sound out, whereas Eliminator was right up in the front, and then Billy Gibbons would just weave his guitar over it, and you could really tell it was very much a synth album. This is different. So you can see this is like a transitional album, and they are heading into a more bluesy direction. Like My Head's in Mississippi, I agree with you. That is a fantastic song, but it's a pointer to their next stage of their career. It's more blues. It's got a nice groove to it. It's a little bit raw, but I like some of the glossy songs. I'll put a shout out to the first song on the album, Concrete and Steel. It's got a hooky riff. You hear the synths, but the guitars are way more up in the mix. Love Thing. I put this stripper rock vibe. There were some songs in the 80s, Reed, that had a bit of a, the bump and grind, the stripper rock vibe, like Robert Palmer, Addicted to Love, Pour Some Sugar in Me. I'll put this song in that category. We must do a show on that one. Anyway, Penthouse, the vocal line sounds strangely like Sleeping Bag, maybe Recycler. Isn't it funny that they call it Recycler? There are some riffs and melodies and guitar licks that you can think, oh, this reminds me of this and this reminds me of that. So maybe they're being ironic. Tell It, Billy Gibbons' guitar line augmented over a synth line. There's a little bit of groove, bit of R&B. Decision of Collision, not a note wasted. Billy Gibbons is really just giving it all. But there's no way, shape or form, in my opinion, Recycler's the worst album. It's a really decent album. And I really had a fun listen to this recently as part of this show. It's gone way up in my estimation. Recycler, that's my number 8.
I do think it was an unfortunate choice of name. And it's possible that maybe they wanted to move on and do something which wasn't quite, artists are usually restless, creative spirits. I should say Billy, because Billy is 80% of the songwriting of this band. With some outside influences. Dusty and Frank, rarely get writing credits, usually 1 or 2 songs an album. So you're really talking about Billy Gibbons here. And maybe he would have preferred to move on and do something else, but he knew which side of the bread, was buttered. Sorry, I just discovered I have a cat in here. I thought I'd locked all my cats out. Okay. My number 7 is actually going to be the very next album, Antenna. I remember the first time I heard Antenna on the radio, and I was like, oh yeah, ZZ Top sounds a lot more muscular now. So, but re-listening to it, I was actually kind of surprised how still similar the sonics on it are to Recycler. But it's more of an iteration rather than a revolution. There's much less synthesizer. The guitars are way forward. It is way dirtier. There's so little clean guitar on it. Even on the ballad, it's just fuzzed out to the maximum. Songs like Pincushion, I remember that being on the radio all the time. Fuzzbox Voodoo is great. I even like the ballad, and I rarely like ZZ Top's ballads because I think Billy has the wrong voice for balladeering. He's not a man with a pretty voice. He's a man with a rough, bluesy rock and roll voice. Dusty was the one with the pretty voice. He actually sounded like Elvis, one of his huge heroes, which is why they covered so many Elvis tunes if you see him live. And Dusty was always, like, they have Viva Las Vegas on their best of, and Dusty sings that one. But yeah, it's, again, very much like Recycler, but much more powerful. But again, you get those lyrics that, you know, when I was younger, I found them more playful. Now I find them kind of annoying. Songs like Cover Your Rig about condom use. I mean, that was a topic through the late 80s and early 90s that was getting increasing traction in the United States. But I was like, come on, guys, really? And some of their stuff is just juvenile.
Bad, Reed.
It's juvenile. If you were
funny.
13, it's not that bad. These dudes were in their 40s.
I've heard a lot worse anyway. But yeah, look, I understand where you're coming from. Hey, Reed.
I will say, this is the album that I remember ZZ Top come into town in 1990. They were charging $40 for concert tickets when everybody else was charging $25. And I was like, $40? What the hell? You know, now I don't know what $40 would get you at a ZZ Top concert. I think this t-shirt cost $40.
Yeah. Reed, in 1993, they signed a really big record deal to go to RCA Records, 35 mil. Didn't really pay off, did it, in the end? Because, you know, Antenna, the subsequent albums at RCA, it was diminishing returns. Do you think RCA Records may have regretted, you know, that contract?
If they didn't get the earlier albums as part of that, then yes, I think they did. But also, again, they should have known better than to think that a 20-year-old band was going to have increasing sales at that point. But no one really saw the music industry bottoming out in 2002, which is literally what happened.
But it wasn't really a smart move when Recycler didn't really set the world on fire. So maybe they were kind of hopeful that Antenna would have, you know, twisted that round and got them to, you know, on the upward, like Afterburner or Eliminator. I don't know.
Right.
Not great decision making, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. As business, the record companies were never known for making good business decisions.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go back to 1979, and it's Degüello, which means decapitation, which is a nice name for an album, isn't it? I love this album. It's got a lot of their quintessential humorous songs. I love I Thank You. It's stripped back. It's got a spotlight on Billy Gibbons, and he's got that throaty, husky tones, which you were talking about. The guitar lines on this song are very clean. There's no reverb. A little bit of a different sort of tonality with Billy Gibbons. She Loves My Automobile. It's got that nice blues boogie shuffle, full of sass and full of humor. I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide. It's got a lot of attitude and it's cool. This song was actually inspired by a Texas blues musician, Joey Lang. And he didn't have a driver's license, Reed, and apparently his wife used to drive him around to all the gigs around Texas in a brand new Cadillac. So, Cheap Sunglasses, love that song. Dusty Hill, that fluid bass line, drives the song along, full of humour, cheek and sass. Dust My Broom, wonderful slide guitar over a 12-bar blues. And A Fool for Your Stockings, clean guitar, jazzy chords. There's a lot of jazzy guitar lines in this album. It's a different side to the band, but it's a lot more humorous and probably plays on those sort of lyrics that you're not too, you know, fussed on anyway. But to me, brings a smile to my face, and that's my number 7.
Okay. Well, Degüello is actually my number 6. So I'm always surprised to be reminded that this album came out in 1979, because it really sounds like what they were doing in 73, 74. It is, in my opinion, the last of the truly old school ZZ Top albums. Even on the very next album, they would start experimenting with adding some keyboards in. But on Degüello, it's still just the power trio. And like you say, it's got I Love, I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide. Cheap Sunglasses has been a classic rock radio staple for decades now. On the flip side, I freaking hate Dust My Broom. I hated the original. I didn't like it when Robert Johnson did it. I don't like it when any freaking blues band plays it. Every blues band covers that stupid song. If I never hear it again, I will be a happy man. And I just happen to like enough of the rest of the album that I'm willing to forgive its inclusion. I'm not a blues fan. Did I mention that? Bluesy is fine, but blues, no.
You mentioned it 5 or 6 times. Just keep it up, Reed. We'll just keep it going, eh? All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So yeah, what's your number 6?
Well, I am, and this is where this is Contrarian. Afterburner. I'm going to defend Afterburner, my friend. Number 6. I love that album. So this is the follow-up to Eliminator. Yes, it's Eliminator Part 2. Went to number 4 in the US charts, UK number 2. Sold 1 million albums, did really well in Australia. ZZ Top actually came to Australia for the first time, supported by Rose Tattoo, on the back of this album. Sleeping Bag, I love that song. Billy has always said this is the harshest tone that he has ever used on a ZZ Top track. I love that the pinch harmonics, and it's got this... he's got these little squalls, these little raspy squalls that he's using. And there's a guitar lead. I don't know whether it's near the lead break, but it sounds like one of those Indian cobra flutes. And he gets this wonderful effect out of the guitar. I love it. Stages, that's kind of, it's a pop song, but it's great. It's melodic, it's danceable. Rough Boy, this goes into the balladry. I don't mind it. I think it's heartfelt. It's sincere. Velcro Fly. This is probably their best pop song. It's the most synth poppiest song. It's almost new wave-ish. And then, Billy just, all he basically does is just, weaves his little blues lines in and out. It's all sort of sequences and synth. I don't know what Frank's doing on this particular song, or Dusty for that matter. But I think this is the most infectious pop song out of the whole album. Planet of Women, I like that. That's another one. It's got some nice, juicy, heavy guitar lines. Look, this album cops a lot of crap, but as a pop blues album, and it's in that wheelhouse of Eliminator, I think it's fine. And, you don't sell 5 million albums if it's crap. Anyway, that's my opinion. Afterburner.
Okay, well, a lot of interesting correlations here, because my number 5 is Afterburner.
Hey, have you been stealing my notes again?
Well, it does mean that I'm following you up on all these albums, though, so I have less to say about them. Although I will say I think that Sleeping Bag is a better pop song than Velcro Fly. So one of the I'll just mention this. Billy Gibbons is, to the best I can remember, the first really popular recording artist using pick squeals. He's been doing that for his entire career. Those types of noises are things that a recording engineer would shoot you for in the 1960s. They were eliminated at all costs. They didn't want, they didn't want pick squeals. They didn't want to hear your fingers sliding between chords. They didn't want to hear you lifting off and letting open strings ring out. All of those things were eliminated with ruthless efficiency in the studio, and Billy Gibbons made those part of his signature style. And Billy does more pick squeals than Zakk Wylde, which it cracks me up because Zakk gets so much hate for, he just did pick squealing. I'm like, Billy does way more pick squeals than Zakk Wylde. For that matter, so does Vivian Campbell, another pick squealer who got it from Billy Gibbons. But the thing is, Billy does those squeals as he's playing. It's just an organic part as he's really digging into the notes. You just roll your thumb over it. Imagine you're holding a pick. You just roll your thumb over a little bit, and it'll start squealing like that. So instead of making it, Zakk Wylde uses it at the end of a line and then doubles it and puts a chorus on it so that it does this and it really stands out. Whereas in Billy, it's incorporated into the rest of his playing. So that's a really iconic thing about Billy Gibbons playing. But I think "Sleeping Bag" is one of the finest pop songs that they recorded.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, the Afterburner's only flaw is that it came after Eliminator. If it had been the album they put out instead of Eliminator, I think it still would have been, very popular. And Rough Boy may be the best of the ballads that they did. Well, actually, no, there's one I like better coming up, but pretty good.
Yeah. I saw this tour in Australia, and I have to say it was quite disappointing. They only played for 70 minutes, Reed, and they were very not engaged. There was a lot of flash, there was a lot of the lasers, but they were just sort of standing there playing. And to be quite frank, I thought Rose Tattoo were better. However, I did see ZZ Top about 30 years later, and they were sensational. And it was more in a club setting. And literally, Billy Gibbons and I were like just a couple of meters away, and I was just studying the fretboard and his technique, and he was just like a pure magician. So in a club surrounding, fantastic. But in a big stadium in front of 10,000 people, not so engaging. It was just, 70 minutes, not good. Have you ever seen them live?
I have multiple times. I gave them a lot of space for years because I saw them twice within 2 years, and the show was literally identical, right down to the stage banter. I mean, these guys haven't socialized in years. They just go out on the road, and they clearly work out, I'm going to be here, you're going to be here, I'm going to say this, you're going to respond this. And some of it was just, it was almost painful to watch the guys kind of, I don't know if they were just in a rough patch or what, but I didn't feel like they were really enjoying being around each other. But they did still play like crazy.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's common knowledge, but they don't like each other, do they? I don't think there's a close friendship. Probably in the early days, they probably there was a bit of a bond, but over time, it became sort of probably a tolerance of each other, and just pure a working relationship and doing whatever it has to do to make it work. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, probably. And again, because ZZ Top was Billy's band, still is Billy's band, I'm sure that, like anything, once they stopped being starving, fighting for their existence musicians and became ultra wealthy, there was probably a little bit more resentment about who was getting paid what and blah, blah, blah. I don't know what their financial arrangements are. I know Dusty Hill had a big old horse ranch up in, I think, Tennessee or Kentucky before he died. So, clearly he wasn't hurting. None of those guys were poor, but I think Billy was the one that made out the biggest.
Absolutely, but look, they're not short of a quid. I can tell you that for sure. And Frank Beard was on record that he had some substance abuse issues, and they supported him. And like when we get into the 2000s, and there's an album that I'm going to talk about very shortly, it's quite clearly evident that he wasn't recording on this album, but he's still part of the fold. So, whether their personal relationships were strong or not, they still kept the image of a power trio, band of brothers with, let's put on a show, even though the reality was something completely different.
Right. There was one particularly lame moment where they started off the song Pearl Necklace, where Dusty Hill just went up to the mic and he went, diamonds and jewelry. And Billy kind of looks at him and goes, heh, heh, heh. Diamonds and jewelry. Diamonds and jewelry. I was like, really? Now that was lame once, but then to see them a second time and then do the exact same shtick, I was like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, my next pick is actually an album that sort of a bit of a segue about the lack of Frank Beard drums, and that is Rhythmeen. So This, in my opinion, Reed, is heads and shoulders one of the best ZZ Top later era albums. It's a noisy, heavy album. The guitar sounds are very swampy. They're dirty. Billy's been on record that he did low tunings for the album. Now, the thing I'm oscillating on this, and I've changed my opinion a few times, is the drum sound. Now, you listen to this album and you know straight away it's not Frank Beard. Frank Beard is a very tidy, crisp drummer. He plays in the pocket, but this one has just got fills galore. There's a lot of electronic augmentation. There's a lot of the snare sound is very tight. There's a lot of hi-hats and crash cymbals. It's a very noisy album. And I'm not sure, I've listened to this album multiple times over the last couple of weeks, if I like the drum sounds or not. So I might throw to you, just post my little synopsis. Rhythmeen's a great song. It's Billy Gibbons in your face with that growly voice. It's a masterclass in guitar weaving kind of like a Hendrix-like lick into a blues song. Bang Bang or Shangalang. Billy Gibbons holds together with his wonderful weaving blues lines. Vincent Price Blues, it's sludgy, it's down-tuned, it's a slow plodding blues song. She's Killing Me, it's got these big fat tones, sledgehammer downstrokes of Greg Morrow. It's a really heavy album. They're definitely going into a different direction. They're not as many hooks. It's something that you can't, the band in the 80s with Eliminator and Afterburner and this band is like day and night. They're completely gone into another phase of their career. But Rhythmeen's my number 5. I like it or not, but the drum sound, I'm still sort of undecided whether I like it or not. Is it too busy for ZZ Top? Because I think ZZ Top, the classic sound, or the ZZ Top I like, is the more tight groove in the pocket sort of playing of Frank Beard.
All right, but I'll go to my number 4. So this is an album that continually surprised me that I kept moving it up my list, because it is an album that commits all the sins that I've already ranted about. It's too bluesy. It's way too bluesy. And that is the album Tres Hombres. Of all of the early ZZ Top albums, Tres Hombres is my favorite. And I will say, in general, one of the things that always surprises me about 70s ZZ Top is just how different Billy Gibbons' voice sounds. I don't know what happened between the 70s and the 80s, if it was just damage from cigarettes and alcohol or changing to digital recording or what was going on, but it is a very different voice. It sounds like a different human being. Some of it may be because Billy eliminated a lot of his Texas twang. Now, he still uses it when he's giving interviews and stuff, but he doesn't sing with as much of it now. But you go back to those early albums and he really sounds like he just, came across the Rio Grande. But I love Tres Hombres. Tres Hombres has that fantastic opening of Waiting for the Bus and Jesus Just Left Chicago. And I don't know about Australia, but on American rock radio, when they play those songs, they always play them back to back. You never just hear one or the other. It's always both of them played one after the other. It's kind of like We Are the Champions and We Will Rock You from Queen. They're so you think they're not even different songs, even though they sound sonically completely different. So I don't know why they play them back to back, but they do. And that's how I've gotten used to listening to them. But then to follow up that beautiful, slow, swampy blues with Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, which is a fantastic, fast-moving, much more like their 80s stuff. That is just a great beginning. And then, of course, you have stone cold classic LaGrange. And again, to me, it's not about Billy playing the blues. It's about Billy playing the blues over great pop songs. LaGrange is a great pop song. And again, my argument against Billy being the less is more guitar player, that song is 3/4 guitar solos. Randy Rhoads never got to record a song that was 3/4 guitar solo. except for his one instrumental song. So there's more guitar in a ZZ Top song than there is in 90% of the rock music out there. He wasn't a less is more guy. He played way more guitar than almost any other guitar player in the 70s. He simply wasn't playing the notes as fast. But that entire album is just amazing. It's full of fantastic licks. And I forgive them for Hot, Blue, and Righteous, which I think is absolutely terrible, and I'm not particularly fond of Closer, Have You Heard? But the rest of the album is astounding.
All right. Nice take. All right. My number 4 is Rio Grande Mud. Francine. Every time I hear that song, it reminds me of Brown Sugar. It's got a real Stones feel. That was the band's first top 100 single. It's got a real groove to it. Just Got Paid. Love that song. Dirty, raw, boogie, blues. It's got a great slide. I love his slide work on this album and that song. It sounds like it's a little conversation within the song. And it gets more berserk as it goes along. The drum fills on this album are really, really good. I love the double tracking of Frank Beard. Frank Beard's drumming in the 70s was just sublime, and more about that later. Apologies to Pearly. Even the instrumental, it's got that devilish slide from Billy. Mushmouth Shoutin', the little tribute to Muddy Waters that you so love. I think it's got that hot, fiery harmonica. I think it's a really good album. It's very strong. It's my number 4, Rio Grande Mud. All right,
Okay.
Reed, business end.
All right, so now we're getting to the final 3. Pardon me here. Some days the hair just gets in my eyes. All right, so I am going with my first exposure to ZZ Top, the album that everybody in my high school owned, Eliminator. I'm really not sure what new I possibly have to say about Eliminator. It's a huge selling album, easily ZZ Top's best-selling album. At the time, now not in the long run, but at the time, it sold as well as AC/DC's Back in Black. I mean, obviously, Back in Black has gone out to sell double what Eliminator eventually did, but it was comparable in sales back in the 80s. So think about that. ZZ Top was just as big. And that is absolutely phenomenal for a band that had been around since 1971. These weren't kids. They weren't in their 20s anymore. And if you look at those videos, they were only in their early 30s, but they looked like old men standing there with the really long beards. No one else looked like that. So they had a very unique look. But the fact that they were able to transition from being a 70s blues-based boogie band to being this semi-electronic progressive rock band, and I don't mean progressive in the like Emerson, Lake and Palmer sense. I mean progressive in the sense of moving forward from other styles of music. No one else negotiated that changeover as well as ZZ Top. I don't even think AC/DC did as well, because I think AC/DC shot for the moon with Back in Black, and then after that, their trajectory goes way down for the Brian Johnson albums. Whereas I think ZZ Top, I think they consistently put out better albums than AC/DC. But there was just no escaping those 3 singles. I will say, when I talk about how stupid some of their lyrics are, this is also the album that had TV Dinners, which I can't believe that song was released as a single, because that is one dumbass song. It's the kind of thing that Billy must have just been drunk and going, I need some lyrics, guys. Jimmy, what'd you have for dinner last night? Dinner with the Swansons? Actually, I bet no one even understands what I'm talking about. Swanson TV dinners. Does anyone eat those anymore? I haven't had one in 40 years. But
regional joke there, folks.
Yeah. It's a terrible song. The song itself is the music might be okay, but it's completely throwaway. Stuff like I Got the Six, again, I'm like, Okay, I was 15, so I thought it was funny because I was 15. Guys who were 35, I think, have much less excuse for thinking that's good lyricism. But it's a monster album. You simply can't top it in a very realistic sense. ZZ Top is still touring that album today. I guarantee if you go to a ZZ Top concert, half of the people there are there to hear the 70s stuff, and half of them are there to hear the stuff off of Eliminator. So, plus that car, man, that beautiful Ford Hot Rod, which he apparently paid $55,000 for. And they used to take it on tour and park it in front of the stadium. And a friend of mine told me that the Highway Patrol was, this is in Oklahoma City, but the Highway Patrol was on standing orders to, if they saw that car on the road, to pull it over because it had been stolen multiple times from in front of ZZ Top concerts. And they didn't drive it. So if they saw it out on the road, it meant somebody had stolen it again.
Great story. All right, Reed, we top three business end for me. My number three is this one, this little beauty. I'm going to focus on the drumming of Frank Beard. I think this has got his finest drumming. It's crisp. It's just got Phil's arama all the way through the album. I like It's Only Love. It's got a simpler guitar riffs. There's a lot more space and atmosphere on this album, and I don't know whether they were listening to the West Coast rock like Eagles, etc., but there's a lot more cleaner guitar sounds. There's a less blues influence on this album, a lot more space between the notes. Arrested for Driving While Blind. It's rock, blues, country. It's a bit of a hybrid. Enjoy and Get It On. It's got this wonderful finger-picking, nimble, and a tasty slide. She's a Heartbreaker. I'm a sucker for country steel pedal. Notes underpinning this wonderful Stonesy sort of riff. Reminds me of Dead Flowers. Snappy Khaki, tight grooves. El Dablo, lots of atmosphere, trying different guitar tones. But again, Frank Beard's drumming, it's so crisp and, just these wonderful little fills. And Dusty Hill, his bass playing is very underrated. And he actually, supposedly a bit of a blues band, a lot of his bass lines are really way funky. So this is a real dark horse in their catalogue. I don't think folks really give this the recognition that it deserves, but that's my album. That's my number three.
Okay. All right. I'll try and go a little faster on these last two. So now, I know these are the ones that people are going to have out the pitchforks for. Sorry, people. I've already mentioned I don't like the bluesier albums. This is just my taste. You're welcome to disagree with it. I don't read the comments, so I don't care. Peter might notice. My number two, and this was a shock to me, is El Futura. I love this album. I love it. I was obsessed with I Gots to Get Paid when it came out on the radio. I was like, I don't know what this song is, but I love it. I mean, it's ZZ Top. And this is, I started to say this earlier, Billy Gibbons is a man, as a guitar player, who went from an extremely busy guitar player to, by the time we get to 2012 and La Futura, he's playing the minimum notes. He's the master of fretboard efficiency. He's not like Steve Vai floating up and down the fretboard. He's just going to pick out 4 or 5 notes, stay right there and get everything done that he needs to do. And I love the sound of it. It sounds so amazing. Took 4 years to record. Rick Rubin is producer. The album was assembled. They just recorded for 4 years, and then Rick Rubin took it and made an album out of it. Well, this may be one of the very few times I agree with Rick Rubin's choices. I'm not a Rick Rubin fan. I still blame him for ruining 13. I will never forgive that. Anyway, La Futura, though, great album. It's short. It's only 11 songs, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. Mescalero had way too many songs, and ZZ Top is a band that needs to get in, do their business, and get out. And it even has it's got a ballad that I don't mind, which Over You. because also on this album, now that Billy is well into late middle age, he's singing comfortably within his range. It's more about the groove than it is really pushing it. And I think he sounds better than when he's trying to be, Frank Sinatra. So I love it. I love even like Chartreuse, which is a boogie rock song. Yeah, the Over You. Yeah, I mean, again, not a wonderful song, but I think he sounds better. And it's a great, punchy pop rock blues album with some beautiful guitar tones. And I just can't stop listening to it.
Very good, very good. I wonder how interventionist Rick Rubin was, because I've heard stories that he just lies on the couch and says a couple of words.
Yep, that's what I read on this album. He told them, "I'm just going to put you three guys in a room and let you play." So, Billy Gibbons says we didn't know what it was going to sound like when it came out. Some of those performances were 4 years old. We didn't even remember doing them.
Yeah, I think he's like a producer whisperer. He'll say a word here, a word there, and a little bit of magic dust, and the rest, it just happens.
Right.
Eliminator is my number 2. What can I say after you've covered it all? Gimme All Your Lovin', Sharp Dressed Man, Got Me Under Pressure, Legs, Punch, 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 TV Dinners. It's kind of fun. But it's a real head scratch why that was the number 2 single in America. The big song that got Australia hooked on ZZ Top, as I said at the start of the show, was Legs. I think this is genius. It's marketing genius that you pick a middle-aged band that, let's be honest, they're not ultra charismatic, and then they wrap it around with all this imagery and mystery, the sunglasses, the car, the hot women, the snazzy videos, all the embellishments, all the bells and whistles wrapped around this middle-aged band and turn them into superstars, because previously their albums, 1 million, gold, platinum, now diamond. It was a phenomena. And, the songs, they're really, really strong on this album. Even if you take away the rapping and the video clips, the songs do stand up. Now, the key thing that really tapped into that pop audience was drum machines, synths, because, they were looking at it. It was 124 beats per minute was the right speed of a song that will cross over into the dance, the clubs, where people can boogie to. Reed, I was going to clubs in the 80s and people were dancing to this music. So it was total crossover. So you had a band where it was the beer drinkers and hellraisers would be watching the band, getting into teenagers and, the female population, because there was a lot of these songs that you could shake your butt to, danceable, 124 beats per minute. And surprisingly, Billy Gibbons said that the influences were Depeche Mode and Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. That's not 2 bands that you would expect to hear in a ZZ Top review show, is it, Reed?
Right. Well, now, that is specifically about the use of the synthesizers and the sequencers. So it wasn't his songs that were that.
No. But
the instrumentation of it, definitely.
The instrumentation, absolutely. So, look, I think that the songs hold up, but it would be interesting to hear a much more organic version of these songs without the synthesizers and the synth lines. I still think they'd hold up if it was really purely just, them playing bass, guitar, drums. I still think a lot of these songs would hold up. But look, it's a juggernaut, Eliminator, 1983. There's not much more I can say. It was a pop culture phenomenon. And this really sort of is what everyone knows ZZ Top for. I mean, in 100 years from now, I know it's a cliche, this will be the album that they'll show in reference books and encyclopedias when you look up ZZ Top.
Right. And it'll have a picture of that car. Okay, so my number 1, it's already been mentioned, told you we'd get back to it later, is Rhythmeen. This is an album that I love every single track on it. For once, I don't have any caveats. There's no, well, I'm not so fond of that song. I love everything about this album. Even the blues isn't real blues on it. It's dirty, it's grinding, it's fuzzier than he ever recorded anything. He's tuned down to C on some parts. I mean, that's Black Sabbath territory, right? This is the same type of tuning Tony Iommi was using recording Master of Reality. And it just gives it a different sound. Bang Bang, you talk about stripper rock. Bang Bang is about a stripper. Black Fly. See, this is one of those songs. I think Black Fly's got some dumbass lyrics, but it doesn't matter. It's so groovy and just a perfectly constructed song. And that back and forth where he, Dusty Hill will say, Black Fly, buzzing and buzzing around. It's just, I love everything about that song. Vincent Price Blues is an interesting song because it is the story of Robert Rodriguez's horror movie From Dusk Till Dawn. So ZZ Top, now that came out just before Rhythmeen hit shelves, and ZZ Top has a song on the For Dusk Till Dawn soundtrack, but it's not Vincent Price Blues. So I wonder if they also wrote that song for From Dusk Till Dawn, and then the movie just decided not to use it, so they put it on the album instead. But I think it's a fantastic song. The one that I love so much is Hairdresser. And it's a song about how he's having a bad hair day and he needs a hairdresser because he's ashamed to step outside. And that is stupid lyrics, but it's so fun. And it just grinds. There's movement from start to finish, and these badass Billy Gibbons laying back ZZ Top lyrics. It sounds so wonderful. I love My Mind Is Gone, which adds this weird little psych bit. And he's got this real pulsing bum 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 bum. I think he's talking about drugs. Sounds like he's talking about smoking a lot of weed. Something they're not really known for. And Humbuckin' Part 2. I can't even do it, but he's almost like throat singing. He's down so low in his voice. And I particularly love, there's a drum breakdown in the middle of the song. And Billy goes, Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is an African country. I have no idea why Billy included it in the song. It doesn't make any sense in the context of the rest of the lyrics. It's a weird little inclusion, but yeah, it's cool. I know he collects African art. He legitimately has a huge collection of African art, so maybe he had been in Burkina Faso and told him, yeah, I'll put you in the song. Yeah. So who knows, man? I don't know what that's about, but I love the sound of it. It's so aggressive. It is the closest thing to heavy metal that ZZ Top ever put out. And this is when I think of really down-tuned, great songs. Rhythmeen is it, man. Every song on this album, I love it.
It's swampy, for sure. What do you think about my I wouldn't call it a criticism, but just raising maybe a minor quibble about the drums?
Well, the drums are busy, but the entire album is busy. Again, I think this is the thing about Billy's playing later in life. He's putting in more guitar lines. They're just not as many notes in each line. So I think the busier drum fits the rest of the album. It is very different, though, than the laid-back minimalistic style that you get on the earlier ZZ Top albums, and quite possibly it wasn't Frank Beard.
Well,
Officially, it was Frank Beard, though.
Yeah. A lot of cymbals, though. It's very, very noisy, and I don't know. I cannot put my finger at this point in time where I like the drums or not, and whether it fits, but look, it's as clear as day. When you listen to this album, you know that's not Frank Beard. But there's a couple, there might be one or two tracks where I think I sort of detect that Frank Beard might have been brought back and done some augmentation, or maybe where the drum lines are a little bit more simpler. But you said that Greg was doing a lot of the drumming for ZZ Top, say from 2000 onwards.
Well, that's officially a rumor, although Billy Gibbons would occasionally in interviews let Greg Morrow's name slip. Greg played drum in ZZ. Doggone it. He played in Billy's solo recordings. So it's certainly possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you'd never know it from reading the album credits.
Yeah, absolutely. Buried. All right. Well, my number one is probably a lot of folks' number one, and it's Tres Hombre. I love this. And I love this, you know. Is that the cuisine in Texas in 2024? Is that like a typical Texas nosh up read?
Well, what they call Tex-Mex. And yeah, it's a little messy, but you could still get that at a restaurant.
I've been to Texas and I've had Tex-Mex, but I've never seen it like that. That looks like, is that the backstage rider that they would be having? I don't know, a few beers?
Probably.
Anyway.
So if anyone's curious, Tex-Mex has a lot more cheese. That's the thing that really separates real Mexican food from Tex-Mex is how much cheese they use. Texas, they use a lot of cheese.
Absolutely. This has got all the classic songs. Waiting for the Bus and Jesus Just Left Chicago. It's like blues, gospel blues. We haven't really heard that on classic rock radio in Australia, but there is one song that gets played to death, and I don't mind it because it is such a classic song, and that is LaGrange, which is their ode to the brothel or the chicken shack. And again, it goes into that carnal stripper rock genre. Just everything is just so perfect in that song. The drumming, the bass playing, the guitar lines. It's a bit of a staple of their show, Reed, that I think they do that as the encore or towards the end of the set. They always do a little bit of finale with LaGrange. I think it's one of those songs that if they didn't play, there'd be a riot. But this album's got a lot of other great songs on it. Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers. I like the Motorhead version too. I'll just put a quick shout. I think that was Did you like the Motorhead version of that song?
I do. I think, it may sound weird to some people, but Motorhead and ZZ Top would have made a fantastic double bill on tour.
Yeah, I should research that. Maybe they did. Not sure. Hot Blue and Righteous, Move Me on the Down the Line. Just love the playing. I think this is the peak of their 70s. It's got those tasty blues licks. Frank Beard's drumming is in the pocket, and Dusty Hills is just, those wonderful, funky, driving bass lines. And this is the power trio, the power trios. This is the album for me. And not much more to say. So there you have it, ZZ Top. One little anecdote that I want to share is that somebody went up to Frank Beard backstage and asked him the question, and he must have heard this 100 times. Oh, what does it feel like your last name's Beard, but you don't have a beard? And he goes, well, at least I can go to the supermarket and nobody knows who I am. Reed, any honourable mentions that may have just been on the periphery of the top 10?
No, not really. Again, there's ZZ Top, especially towards the lower order, is about songs. And I will say that there are no albums where I don't like any of the songs. Like on Fandango, I love the studio side of it. I love Tush. That's a fantastic song. Billy's an amazing slide player. I'm on board anytime the man is playing slide. In fact, thinking about the way he plays his licks, a lot of his licks, even if he's using his fingers instead of a slide, are composed like a slide player. He thinks like a slide player all the time. But it's just songs. I don't like the live side at all on Fandango. Like Thunderbird, no, it doesn't do it for me. I know you like the live side and to like more of it. I'm like, I'm so much the opposite. I don't like the live side of that. But every album has songs I like. But there aren't any others that, they make a hell of a greatest hits package between the 5 albums. But possibly with the exception of Triple X, which is kind of like I think of Triple X as like all of the songs that weren't good enough to be on Rhythmeen. Kind of sounds the same but weaker in all departments.
Yeah. Honourable mentions for me, just on the periphery of the 10 would be Antennae or La Futura. So there you go. Well, Reed, that was really enjoyable. And to be quite frank, we had a lot of crossover between you and I. We were sort of level pegging on a lot of the selections and in that order, which is quite rare for us. But
Yeah,
I think,
a lot more crossover than I was expecting.
yeah, absolutely. But we both dig ZZ Top. And folks, do yourself a favor, check out the ZZ Top catalog beyond Eliminator, because there are lots of jewels in the crown to discover. You can check Reed Little on a show called The Contrarians. He is on thousands of shows, and he's also a brother and loyal friend to this channel as well, Rock Daydream Nation. Type in Reed Little, and boy, we must have been doing hundreds of shows, haven't we, Reed? Time flies. I think we started in 2021.
Yeah,
We
I was
did
going
our
to say we'll
first
be
show.
hitting our third anniversary soon.
Oh, gee, it's still going at it, still doing it. But look, folks, tell us what you think of ZZ Top, what your favourite album is, and look, if you disagree, just put it in. You know, I'll even get Reed to read it this time, promise. So please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation, and I can assure you, me and Reed will be putting some more shows in 2024. Cheers.
Cheers.